Have you ever judged someone in the first 5 seconds of meeting them, only to realize you couldn't have been more wrong? What if I told you that the weakest person in the room became everyone's hero when danger struck? This is the story of Marcus, a single father who taught an entire restaurant full of people that true strength has nothing to do with muscles or money. By the end of the story, you'll never look at quiet kindness the same way again. Marcus Chen sat in the corner booth of Rosalind's, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Seattle, nervously adjusting his collar. His sister Emma had convinced him to try one more blind date after 2 years of focusing solely on raising his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. He'd sold his small tech startup to be a full-time dad after his wife died in a car accident, and dating felt like learning to walk all over again. The woman who arrived at his table looked nothing like her profile suggested, not in appearance but in demeanor. Vanessa strutted in wearing designer everything, her heels clicking authoritatively against the marble floor. She was beautiful, certainly, with sharp features and sharper eyes that seemed to calculate his worth before she even sat down. "Marcus?" she asked, her tone already carrying a hint of disappointment. She glanced at his simple button-down shirt and khakis, clearly expecting something more expensive. "Yes, hi, you must be Vanessa." Marcus stood, extending his hand with a warm smile. She shook it limply, her attention already wandering to the other diners, probably comparing him to the men in tailored suits scattered throughout the restaurant. The first 15 minutes were brutal. Vanessa asked about his career, and when he explained that he'd left the corporate world to raise his daughter full-time, her expression shifted from disinterest to barely concealed contempt. "So you're basically unemployed?" she said, loud enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. "You gave up your company to change diapers? Couldn't you have hired a nanny like normal, successful people?" Marcus felt his face flush, but he kept his voice steady. Lily needed her parent, not a stranger. Some things matter more than money. Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound that made him wince. "That's exactly what unsuccessful people say to justify their choices. I'm looking for a partner, not a project. I need someone strong, someone ambitious, someone who doesn't run away from competition to Playhouse." "Being a parent isn't running away," Marcus said quietly, his fingers tightening around his water glass. "It's running toward the most important responsibility I'll ever have." "Right," Vanessa said, rolling her eyes as she flagged down a waiter. "Weak men always find noble-sounding excuses. My ex was the same way, always talking about balance and being present. Meanwhile, I closed 3 major deals last month. That's strength. That's what matters in the real world." Marcus took a deep breath, reminding himself that Emma meant well, even if this date was a disaster. He was about to politely excuse himself when Vanessa's phone buzzed. She grabbed it eagerly, her face lighting up in a way it hadn't once while talking to him. "Oh, thank God," she muttered, typing rapidly. "My colleague Brad just texted. He's actually here with clients. Maybe this night won't be a complete waste." She looked up at Marcus with something close to pity. "Look, you seem nice, but this clearly isn't working. You're not what I need. I'm going to head over to Brad's table. You understand, right? No hard feelings?" Before Marcus could respond, she was already standing, smoothing her dress. "The dinner's on you, obviously. Consider it compensation for wasting my time." With that, she walked away toward a table near the bar where 3 men in expensive suits were laughing loudly over glasses of whiskey. Marcus sat there for a moment, feeling the familiar ache of inadequacy that he'd worked so hard to overcome after his wife's death. He'd built a company from nothing, sold it for enough to never worry about money again, and chosen to invest that wealth in time with his daughter, rather than more business ventures. He'd thought he'd finally accepted that his choices were valid, that he was enough. But Vanessa's words had found the old wounds and pressed down hard. He was about to signal for the check when he noticed something. A man at a table near the kitchen door was acting strangely. The guy was young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a hoodie despite the restaurant's dress code. His eyes were darting around frantically, and his hands were shaking as he fumbled with something in his jacket pocket. Marcus had grown up in a rough neighborhood before his success in tech, and he recognized the signs of someone about to make a very bad decision. Marcus's chest tightened as he watched the young man pull out what was unmistakably a gun, holding it low by his side. The restaurant's ambient noise continued around them, laughter and conversation and clinking silverware, everyone oblivious to the danger that was about to erupt. The young man stood suddenly, his chair scraping loudly. Several people looked up, irritated by the noise, but they didn't see what Marcus saw. The gun was rising. The man's face was twisted with desperation and something else, maybe drugs, maybe mental illness, maybe both. "Nobody move!" the young man shouted, and suddenly the restaurant went from warm and alive to cold and terrified in an instant. A woman screamed. Glass shattered as someone dropped their wine. "I said don't move. Everyone put your phones on the tables now. This is happening." Marcus's mind raced. He'd taken exactly one self-defense class years ago at Emma's insistence, and he'd never been in a real fight in his life. His hands were shaking, and every instinct screamed at him to get down, hide, survive. But then he looked at the gunman more closely and saw something that changed everything. The young man was crying. Tears were streaming down his face, and his hand holding the gun was trembling so badly that Marcus knew an accidental discharge was almost as likely as an intentional one. This wasn't a hardened criminal. This was someone desperate and terrified, which somehow made the situation even more dangerous. "Please," the young man sobbed, waving the gun toward the diners. "I just need money. My sister, she needs medicine, and I can't let her die. Just give me your wallets, your jewelry, and nobody gets hurt. Please." Marcus saw Vanessa at Brad's table, her face pale with terror. All her earlier confidence evaporated. Brad and his colleagues were frozen, hands raised, their expensive watches catching the light. Everyone in the restaurant was paralyzed with fear, looking at each other, wondering who would try to be a hero and get everyone killed. And Marcus realized something in that moment. All the training he'd received as a parent, all the nights talking Lily down from nightmares, all the practice at staying calm when everything inside him wanted to panic, had prepared him for exactly this. Not to fight, not to overpower, but to de-escalate. To reach the frightened human being beneath the threatening exterior. Marcus slowly stood up, his movements careful and deliberate. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "What's your name?" The gunman spun toward him, the weapon now pointed directly at Marcus's chest. "Sit down. Sit the hell down or I'll shoot." Okay, Marcus said, raising his hands but not sitting. "I'm not threatening you. I just want to talk. What's your name?" "Why? Why do you care?" The young man's voice cracked, and Marcus could see he was barely holding it together. Up close, he looked even younger than Marcus had thought, maybe 22 or 23, with hollow cheeks and dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible choices. "Because you said your sister needs medicine," Marcus replied, taking the smallest step forward. Several people gasped, and he heard Vanessa whisper urgently, "What is that idiot doing?" "That's far enough," the gunman shouted, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "I'm serious. I'll shoot." "I believe you," Marcus said, and he meant it. "But I also believe you don't want to. I'm a father. I have a 6-year-old daughter named Lily. If she needed medicine and I couldn't afford it, I'd do anything too. I understand." The young man's face crumpled. "You don't understand anything. The system, it's all rigged. We can't afford insurance. Every hospital turns us away because we can't pay up front. She's 14. 14! And she's going to die because I can't come up with $8,000 for her treatment." Marcus felt his heart break. He knew that desperation, had felt it when his wife was dying and no amount of money could save her. "What's her name? Your sister?" "Maya," the young man whispered. "Her name is Maya, and she has a blood infection, and the antibiotics she needs aren't covered by any program we can find, and I've tried everything. I've begged everyone, and nobody will help. So this is all I have left, okay? This is all I have left." The restaurant was completely silent now. Marcus saw that several people were crying, including an older woman 2 tables over who had her hand pressed to her mouth. Even Vanessa looked shaken, her earlier contempt replaced by something more human. "My name is Marcus," he said gently, taking another small step. "And I'm going to help Maya. But not like this. If you hurt someone here, if something goes wrong and that gun goes off, you'll go to prison and Maya definitely won't get her medicine. Let me help you the right way." "You're lying," the young man said, but his gun hand was lowering slightly. "Nobody helps. That's not how the world works." "Sometimes it is," Marcus said. "Sometimes someone shows up at exactly the right moment. I sold my company 2 years ago. I can write you a check right now for whatever Maya needs. $10,000. 20 if the treatment costs more. But you have to put the gun down first." The young man stared at him, searching Marcus's face for deception. "Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't know Maya." "Because when my wife was dying, people helped us. Strangers brought meals, paid for house cleaning, drove me to the hospital when I was too exhausted to be safe behind the wheel. I didn't deserve their kindness, but they gave it anyway. That's what people do. That's what we're supposed to do for each other." "Marcus?" someone hissed from a nearby table. "Don't be stupid. Let the police handle it." But Marcus ignored them, his focus entirely on the young man in front of him. "What's your name?" he asked again. "Please, let me know who I'm helping." There was a long, terrible moment where anything could have happened. The young man's finger was still on the trigger, and Marcus was close enough now that he couldn't possibly miss. If this went wrong, Lily would lose both her parents. Marcus thought of his daughter, probably at home with Emma right now, watching a movie before bed, completely unaware that her father might not come home. But then he thought about Maya, 14 years old and sick, and her brother who loved her enough to destroy his own life trying to save hers. He thought about all the small moments of kindness that had sustained him through the darkest period of his life. And he knew he was making the right choice, even if it was terrifying. "Dylan," the young man finally said, his voice barely audible. "My name is Dylan." "Hi, Dylan," Marcus said with a gentle smile. "I'm going to reach into my pocket very slowly and get my checkbook. Is that okay?" Dylan nodded, tears streaming freely now. His hand holding the gun dropped completely to his side, all the fight draining out of him. "I didn't want to do this. I'm not a bad person. I just didn't know what else to do." "I know," Marcus said, pulling out his checkbook and a pen. His own hands were shaking so badly he could barely write, but he managed to fill it out. "Dylan, I'm writing this for $15,000. That should cover Maya's treatment plus some extra for whatever else you need. But after I give this to you, you're going to hand me that gun, okay? And then we're going to call a lawyer I know who helps families navigate the medical system. She'll make sure Maya gets enrolled in programs so this never happens again." "I can't accept this," Dylan said, but he was already reaching for the check. "This is too much. Why are you doing this?" Marcus handed him the check and carefully took the gun, immediately removing the magazine and clearing the chamber with movements he'd seen in movies, praying he was doing it right. "Because you love your sister. Because you made a mistake, but you don't have to compound it. Because I can afford to help, and what's the point of having money if you don't use it to make things better?" The moment the gun was secure, several people rushed forward. 2 men grabbed Dylan, but Marcus stepped between them. "Wait, he's not going to run. Are you, Dylan?" Dylan shook his head, clutching the check like a lifeline. "No, I need to call the hospital. I need to get Maya help." "Then let's do that first," Marcus said firmly, pulling out his phone. "What hospital?" Over the next 20 minutes, as police sirens approached in the distance, Marcus orchestrated a miracle. He called his lawyer, who immediately started working on Maya's case. He called the hospital and arranged for payment. He even called a bail bondsman he'd helped pro bono work with through a nonprofit Emma volunteered for, explaining that Dylan would need legal representation but shouldn't have to wait in jail when his sister needed him. The police arrived and the situation became more complicated, but Marcus stayed with Dylan through all of it, vouching for him, explaining the circumstances, even offering to testify on his behalf. The restaurant manager, initially angry about the disruption, broke down crying when he heard the full story and refused to press charges. Vanessa approached Marcus as the police were taking Dylan's statement. She looked genuinely humbled, a dramatic change from the woman who'd mocked him an hour earlier. "I was wrong about you," she said quietly. "What you did was, I've never seen anything like it. You risked your life." "I did what anyone should do when they see someone in pain," Marcus replied, his adrenaline finally fading and leaving him exhausted. "Dylan's not a criminal. He's a scared kid trying to save his sister in a broken system." "I called you weak," Vanessa continued, her voice cracking. "I said the worst things, and then you were the strongest person here. You were the only one brave enough to act." Marcus looked at her, seeing genuine regret in her eyes, but also seeing the person who'd judged him so harshly for choosing love over ambition. "Vanessa, strength isn't about how much money you make or how many deals you close. It's about standing up when you're terrified. It's about choosing compassion when it would be easier to look away. It's about sacrificing what you want for what someone else needs." "Like you did when you left your company for your daughter," she said, understanding dawning. "Exactly like that. The strongest choice I ever made was deciding that Lily needed me more than I needed a corner office. Every morning I wake up scared that I'm not enough, that I'm failing her somehow. But I keep showing up. That's strength. That's what parenting is." One of Brad's colleagues, a man named Richard who'd watched the entire exchange, walked over. "You weren't kidding about selling your company. I just Googled you. Marcus Chen, founder of SecureNet Solutions. You sold to Microsoft for $42 million. He looked at Vanessa pointedly. "And you called him unemployed." Vanessa had the grace to look ashamed. "I judged a book by its cover. I'm sorry, Marcus. Truly." Marcus was about to respond when his phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen. "I need to take this. My daughter's probably ready for bed and wants to say goodnight." He walked to a quiet corner and answered, his voice automatically softening. "Hey, sweetheart." "Daddy!" Lily's voice bubbled through the phone. "Aunt Emma let me stay up late. We made cookies and they're so good. When are you coming home?" "Soon, baby girl. I got held up, but I'm leaving now. Save me a cookie, okay?" "I saved you 3. Daddy, did you have a good date? Did you meet a nice lady?" Marcus looked back at the restaurant, at Dylan surrounded by police but clutching that check, and smiling through tears as he talked on the phone to what must be Maya, at Vanessa standing alone and contemplative, at all the other diners who were talking quietly among themselves. Their perspective on what mattered in life probably forever changed. "I met some people who taught me important things," Marcus said honestly. "And I remembered why being your dad is the best thing I'll ever do. I love you, Lily." "Love you more, Daddy. Drive safe." After he hung up, the restaurant manager approached him. "Mr. Chen, I don't know how to thank you. You saved lives tonight. That situation could have ended in tragedy." "Dylan saved his own life," Marcus corrected. "He chose to trust me. That took more courage than anything I did." "Still," the manager insisted, "your meal is on the house. Forever. You ever want to eat here? It's covered." As Marcus finally headed toward the door, several diners stood up and began to applaud. It started slow, just one person, then another. Then the whole restaurant was standing, clapping for the quiet man in the simple shirt who'd proven that true strength has nothing to do with muscles or money or bravado. Dylan, still with the police but waiting for his lawyer, caught Marcus's eye and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Marcus nodded, then stepped out into the cool Seattle night. His hands were still shaking, and he knew he'd probably have nightmares about how badly things could have gone. But he also knew that somewhere in this city, a 14-year-old girl named Maya was going to get the medicine she needed. A young man named Dylan was going to get a second chance. And maybe, just maybe, the story of what happened tonight would ripple outward and remind people that kindness is a choice available to anyone brave enough to make it. As he drove home to his daughter, Marcus thought about Vanessa's words at the beginning of the evening. She'd called him weak for choosing fatherhood over corporate success. She'd mocked his priorities and his choices, and yet when danger struck, when everyone else froze in fear, the weak single dad was the one who stood up. Lily was waiting at the door when he arrived, still in her pajamas holding a plate with 3 slightly burnt chocolate chip cookies. I saved the best ones, Daddy! Marcus swept her into his arms, holding her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. You're my best one, baby girl. Always. Later, after Lily was asleep and Emma had heard the whole story with her hands over her mouth in shock, Marcus sat in his daughter's room, watching her sleep. The nightlight cast a soft glow over her face. Peaceful and innocent and completely unaware of how close she'd come to losing him tonight. He thought about strength, about all the ways society measures it, and how often those measurements are wrong. The world would tell you that strength is dominance, aggression, never backing down, always winning. But Marcus knew better now. Strength is standing in front of a gun when every cell in your body screams to run. Strength is raising a child alone when your heart is broken. Strength is choosing compassion over judgment, understanding over condemnation, hope over cynicism. Vanessa had texted him hours later. You changed my life tonight. I'm volunteering at the family medical advocacy organization your lawyer works with. If there are other Dylans and Mayas out there, I want to help before they get desperate enough to make Dylan's mistake. Thank you for showing me what actually matters. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need her gratitude or her transformation, but he was glad that good was coming from the terror, that Maya would be healed and Dylan would get help, and that maybe a few people would remember the night a weak single dad taught them all what strength really means. He kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, I hope I'm making you proud, kiddo. I hope when you're grown, you'll understand why I chose this, why I'll always choose you. And in her sleep, Lily smiled, safe and loved, protected by the kind of strength the world too often overlooks. The quiet, steady, unshakable strength of a parent's love. The end. The next morning, Marcus's phone exploded with notifications. Someone had filmed part of the incident, and the video had gone viral. Single dad talks down armed robber with compassion, read the headlines. His inbox was flooded with interview requests, with people thanking him, with others sharing their own stories of desperation in a broken healthcare system. But Marcus ignored most of it. He had breakfast to make, a daughter to get ready for school, a life to live that mattered more than fame or recognition. Because he'd learned long ago that the most important work happens in the small moments, in the daily choices to show up and be present, and choose love over everything else. That's the kind of strength that changes the world. One person, one moment, one act of courage at a time.